Greetings. Welcome of peace.
Okay.
Love. We're happy to have you here. This is Miracles with a Twist, where we look at A Course in Miracles from an interfaith perspective, an intercultural perspective. And lately, it's just been multifaceted in many different directions. And it always brings us back to the spiritual path, the mystic's path. And today, we are revisited once again, happily and blessed, with my dear wise friend, Steve Pollack. Hey, Steve. So if you haven't heard my discussions with Steve previously, just scroll down past this recording and you'll find him. I guess this is like your third or fourth time with us. And what usually inspires me to call Steve and start picking his brain is the fact that every Sunday he has an open Zoom meditation discussion, and he sends out a little tease the night before. And usually there's something about that tease that it motivates me to call him and say, "What are you going to talk about? And what's this? How does this inspire you? How are you inspired?" And then we talk about it from lots of different angles, and we get so deep into a rich conversation. And so this is the same as that. So Steve, why don't you introduce the topic?
Was divine providence. And I talked about how it all depends on who's observing. What are their values? What are their opinions? What are their beliefs? Um, so they interpret events as divine providence or perhaps as the opposite, depending on their point of view. And I touched on the general definition of providence, which is care or protection from above. And I shared a few personal stories about things that happened in my life that just struck me as being undeniably an instance of divine providence.
Yeah, and one of the things we're starting to dig deep into was the idea of whether or not divine providence redirects our life, or was it meant to be a part of our life? And so we were telling our stories, and we'll tell a few here as well. And the the spiritual synchronicity, if we want to use another term, is that after we got off our call, I was going down the rabbit hole of Instagram, that some friends had sent me some links, and I was looking at things, and I came across this, and not at all looking for it, but I sent it to you right away. I came across this little clip from The Matrix, and it's the Keanu Reeves character is talking to a woman who calls herself the Oracle. And she asks him a question, and he says, "Why do you ask me if you already know the answer? It's not as if I have a choice." And she says, "You already made a choice. You made a choice before you came. You're here to understand why you made that choice." And I thought, that's just what Steve and I were talking about. So I sent it to you right away, because was it divine providence that showed me that link? I call it spiritual synchronicity because it said what we were saying in our conversation. And one of the things we talked about was that there are many mystic theories that say we made our choices before we came into this body. And by choices, the path we're going to take, the type of experience we're going to have, where we're going to live, and how we're going to live. And some people take issue with that because they say, well, where's free will? And I always say that our experience here is like going for a degree of some sort. You know what kind of degree you want. You know you want your master's in something. You just don't know what classes you're going to have to take to get there. And so that's sort of the discussion that you and I were going back on. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Course in Miracles perspective, because the Course in Miracles tells us that we are in observation. We are in observation of what has already been chosen. And this is very similar to what the Oracle said in the Matrix, and very similar to one of the stories I told you yesterday about the theory from African spirituality that says we make this choice in a higher realm, and we decide what our experiences are going to be, but then we forget. We forget. We come into this world, we come into this life, we grow as adults into a certain amount of madness. And the idea is that instead of getting upset or in a victim mentality about things that happen, that we recognize, oh, this is my opportunity. This is my soul's alchemy because it was divinely ordered. It was divinely ordered. And so this is what it says in a Course in Miracles. It's very simple. It says, what could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and to come, are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? It sounds loving. It sounds like, oh, it's divinely planned because someone knows what you're capable of, what you are worthy of, what is your capacity to rise above the circumstances of your life.
Yes, and crisis is another word for opportunity to learn and grow. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy or always gentle or relaxed, but it's there. And I love that concept of things having been gently planned for your best and highest good. Um, it's just that, we are human beings, so sometimes make choices or decisions that we later want to change our mind. And that's where it gets a little dicey. And that brings up the whole question, is it 100% predestined and providence, or is it all 100% free will? And my teachers used to say it's basically a hybrid, 75% destiny, karma, 25% free will in any given lifetime.
Well, I listened to a story recently. I think you and I discussed that I had gone through a phase of really listening to a lot of near-death experience stories, and there was this one woman who said that she overdosed, and she died in the overdose, and she was looking at herself as the addict in the bathroom dying, and she was like, "Oh, I don't want to go back to that. I don't want to be that. This is nice." Like she was feeling this bliss. And they said, who they are, these gentle, magnetic, mysterious beings of love, light beings of love, we're saying, but you made these choices, and now you get to go back and reinvent your life from that place. And so she had this image of herself, and she said it was like going down a grocery store and picking out these boxes, and one said drug addict, another one said runaway, and these are the choice, these are the personality, the experiences that she chose, and it goes along with the other paths that say yes, these are pre-body, pre-life choices that we make. So then divine providence might come in when we somehow get a peek at that. When I was a little girl, I had these deja vu. I had a deja vu a lot. And I didn't understand what it was. It would be, oh, I've done this before. I've been here before. And it wasn't until I got older that I understand that deja vu is like a glitch in the matrix, or it's a peek into the matrix. Either way, it's us having some sense of knowing that we had this experience. So maybe really what it is, a sense of knowing that, oh, I chose this experience. And like you said, it doesn't mean we have to like it in our earthly experience as our egos or our fears or our upsets to say, why would I choose this? But if we have a deeper knowing that we did choose it, that we chose it in conjunction with a loving being, a loving source, then maybe it'll be easier for us to go through whatever it is we have to go through and grow through. And you and I were going to share some stories about how maybe the experiences we had helped us to see that, to get a glimpse into this other realm that we're participating in, and that we want to participate in more and more. And of course, the Miracle says we have these holy instants where we get it. We're suspended from our egos. We're in touch with just bliss and love and compassion and kindness. And then, somebody honks the horn, or, something happens, and suddenly we're back, and we forget what that feels like. And so that's why we have spiritual practices. That's why you teach meditation, so that we can get back in touch with those holy moments.
It's so self-empowering, isn't it? To just the very thought that, oh, maybe I signed up for this. Maybe on some level, my soul, in its wisdom and in the council of elders' wisdom, knew that this is what would bring me the most growth for where my soul is at. And it's also so life affirming, isn't it? It's like, wait a minute. If I chose this and if there's some way through this that is from that will help me to grow and become stronger and more enlightened, then yeah, I want to endure it. I want to get through it in the best way possible.
Life affirming as opposed to falling into some place of bitterness and anger. You know, we get to these crossroads, you can get bitter, you can get better, you know, and we choose to get better as best we can. That doesn't mean, and here's another thing, because this came up in another discussion. Someone says, well, does that mean you have to take anything from anyone? Because we may be in relationships where people are not nice to us, you know, put us in a position to feel uncared for. That, and you and I have had that discussion around, you know, nonviolent communication and at what point do you make choices? So we're not saying that. We're not saying you got to be a doormat, or you know, you got to let yourself be emotionally beaten, take some punches that aren't for taking. But you can sort of go, okay, what did I learn from it? What do I know about myself? And how can I set a boundary while still extending love? You don't have to be with people that are you've made your decisions, you've learned your lesson. So is that divine providence, or is that something that we have to experience for our soul's alchemy to have these different types of experiences with individuals?
Exactly. And it was relationship challenges and conversational um, blockages that motivated me to study nonviolent communication. And
Right.
that was so helpful to me because I bridged the gap between the bliss and peace of spiritual consciousness, like from deep meditation, and then trying to deal with people in the real world.
Yeah, well, we had a really good discussion on that. And if anybody, that's one of the ones I'd encourage people to go back and listen to, nonviolent communication and A Course in Miracle. And the fact that, you know, we continuously come back to this place where we're willing to do our own self-examination. We're doing our own self-inquiry. I always say that I'm my own inner archaeologist. You know, I'm digging out whoever it is that I need to be, and there might be some stuff that is no longer who I want to be. You know, the story of Michelangelo and David, and they say, "How did you make David?" And he says, "I just chipped away at everything that wasn't David." It's not that David's perfect; it's that he's no longer a big, you know, block of clay. And it's like us, you know, we're chipping away at the things that are no longer our highest self, our highest, best way of being in terms of our spiritual standards.
Yeah.
So what
Yes.
you want to share? Do you want to share some stories, or was there something else you wanted to talk about before we dive into?
Just about the David sculpture, his shape and form, he's kind of like a ideal image of humanity, and it was sculpted very carefully with love. And in fact, the artist had pain in his hands, like from arthritis, by the time he was doing all of that, if I'm not mistaken. And he was asked, "Why do you keep working on this work of art if it's causing you so much pain?" And he would say, "The pain passes, but the beauty remains."
Hey, that's also true of our experiences in life, right? The experiences that are hurtful or that we think are upsetting because from our perspective, and we can have that same concept. It was painful, but I can see the beauty in it, or the beauty that comes of it.
Yeah, the pain will pass.
Pain will pass. So we talked yesterday, last night when we were talking about stories. We got into a lot of stories, and we were saying, "Oh, let's pick some stories to share that are indications of when divine providence appeared in our lives and helped us to get a sense of being connected spiritually to Source."
Yeah. When there's no shortage of those stories, right?
Yeah, truly.
One that I wanted to share was from way back in high school. During my high school summer vacations, I worked in a hospital transporting patients all over the interior of the hospital in wheelchairs and on stretchers. And we were supposed to, I was quite young and not a big, strong guy. So even if you were big and strong, you were supposed to ask one of the orderlies or one of the assistants to come and help you to move a patient so everything could be done properly and carefully. I couldn't find an orderly. I couldn't find any anyone that, sometimes the employees, certain times of day, they would hide out in the stairwells to smoke a cigarette or have a donut or whatever. And I couldn't find anyone. I was under pressure.
Yeah.
So I tried to lift this patient myself from a wheelchair back into his bed, and he started to fall between the wheelchair and the bed, and I yanked him up, and I heard something literally snap in my back. And later, I was just a little bit stunned. They sent me down to the ER for X-rays, and the doctors were scratching their heads, looking at the X-ray, and they said, "Let's take another X-ray," and they're scratching their heads, and then they finally just said, "Go home and take a day off." So that's what I did. But I had pain in my back for years from high school until about the age of, what was it, 26, 27, when I started on my spiritual path and I met my meditation teacher and I made a sort of commitment to myself and to him that I was going to practice meditation daily. And as I would sit in my meditation, you're supposed to sit with your back straight but not stiff. And there was just so much pain in my lower back that I broke down one day, crying, and I just was literally crying and praying. I said, I really want to do this in this lifetime. I know it's important on a soul level, and I just can't do it with all this pain in my back. And after that, I never had that pain again in my lower back when I was meditating. But many years later, I was teaching yoga classes, and all the forward bends aggravated that old injury from like 30 years ago. Yeah, about 30 years ago. And so I went to a chiropractor a few times, and one chiropractor took an X-ray and said, "Do you know your lower back was broken a long time ago?"
No.
No, so I don't, if that's not the power of prayer, then I don't know what is, because I literally broke down crying and praying at the same time, and I think that prayer was heard.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Your back was broken, and here you functioned for 20 years, didn't even know. Yeah, I got a little ache back there. Yeah, that's pretty divine. And how lovely that the power of prayer took that 20 years worth of pain and it just dissipated. It's
Yeah.
almost like you put it into your prayer. Were you praying to be relieved of pain or just as a result of being in this meditative state?
It was, I was trying to meditate, I remember, and the pain was so bad that I came out of meditation and I just broke down, crying and praying. And I remember too when the chiropractor decades later showed me the X-rays. He says, "Right here, this is a broken bone in your lower spine that healed itself somehow." And
Well,
I was working with a broken back.
that's just amazing to me that somehow your brain didn't register the depth of the pain that you would have had. Broken back. Wow. So I want to tell a story about a miracle that occurred. I believe it was divine providence that kept me from being killed. I was walking on Commercial Boulevard, which is not far from where I live. It's like the main boulevard that takes us to the beach from where I live. I'm west of the beach. And as I was crossing over a road that had other roads merging, I heard an accident, I heard a crash, and I saw a car spiraling toward me. It was coming toward me as it was spiraling. And in my memory, I froze. In my memory, I froze in fear. However, I found myself on the other side of the street when I came out of the frozen moment. The car crashed into the place where I was standing. I was no longer standing there. I was now on the opposite side of the street. And I came out of my moment of fear because I thought I was going to get hit. And I'm looking at the car, I'm looking at the crash, and I turn around and there's another car behind me or coming up toward me. And there was a young lady driving the car and she rolled down the window. And I said, "Did you see that?" Because I started to think did I just imagine this? And she goes, yes, I saw it. And I said, was that a miracle? And she said, yes, it was. And she drove away. It was like a scene from Touched by an Angel. Remember that show? And then I just walked home. I walked home and I was living with someone at the time, and I told her the story, and she said, I think I know exactly the spot you're talking about. I know the street you're talking about. We got in the car and drove back, and meanwhile the police are there and everything. There was all this stuff going on. And we drove to the place where I had found myself landed, and it was a house that had a little altar to the Virgin Mary. And the Virgin Mary's like this. Now, I grew up Catholic, and I grew up on Mondays. We had to do these novenas. My dad always did novenas to Mary, Mother, and she has like these blue robes on, and her hands are out like that. And they always told us when we were kids to try and touch her hands, and she'll grant us a miracle. And there it was. There she was in front of this house where I was standing and did not get hit. So divine providence. I think that was a touch by an angel miracle.
It's like you were relocated, like
Yeah,
transported
yeah.
across a major street.
Amazing. To this day I don't know how that to happen. There's no logic to it.
It wasn't a special pair of sneakers you were wearing.
Yeah, the kind that light up, on the bottom.
Wow, I love that. That's an
It's one of my
inspiring
stories.
story.
Thank you. It's unexplainable. It's one of those unexplainable things.
Totally, except perhaps for providence and
For divine
grace.
providence and a miracle, yes.
If providence is care and protection from above, there you have it.
I
Well,
wasn't. I was just
pardon.
gonna say I wasn't meant to get killed that day. I wasn't meant to get hit by
Yeah.
that because that definitely would have killed me the way it was coming at me
Oh, yes. You had a lot more service to do to the world, to
into my
your
into my
community.
to my soul.
Yes. Well, I've got another story. This one, actually, these go way back, don't they? You'll see a pattern here. This one happened in Buffalo, where I'm originally from, and around the year 1980. I had found a job that I really loved there. It was my first real job as a writer in an ad agency, and I got laid off after a couple of years, and I was so sad. I had to go collect unemployment. It was February. I was trudging through slush and ice and snow, um, and I remember going to bed one night and just thinking, just a sense of general desperation, right? Like, why did this happen? I loved this job. I loved working. I wear a suit every day a suit and tie or a sport coat and tie every day to work, and I loved the people, and I just felt so disconnected. So I went to bed one night just feeling sad about the whole thing, and I thought it was just a dream. I think later I realized it was a vision. This um, why isn't old man wearing a turban? I didn't even know what a turban was at that age. And he was pointing down to a little wooden pedestal that had a book, an open book on it. He pointed to the book, and that was it. It was like directed me to this little book on this white wooden pedestal. And I was mystified by that. I didn't know what it meant. I passed it off as just a dream. 2 years later, I had moved from Buffalo back down to Florida for my brother's wedding. And that's when I met my spiritual teacher. It was the son of the one that I saw in the dream, because the one in the dream was already in the other world, right?
Oh.
It was in the beyond. And I started going to these meditation gatherings at Unity Church where they had pictures of these teachers from India. And after going to a few meetings, the facilitator asked me to come up and read a poem from this little book. And I recognized it was the same little book on the same little white wooden podium. And I suddenly realized, oh my God, I was meant to be here.
So he appeared to you in the dream, and then you saw actual physical evidence of his existence.
Yeah, there was actually a picture. There were pictures of four teachers that this facilitator used to bring down from Boca Raton every week. And I didn't recognize it at first because it was a different angle and everything, but it turned out it was him. And I just it gave me that sense of certainty. Like, yeah, I'm right where I need to be.
Yeah, and wow, just to recognize the person who appeared to you in the dream, that's amazing. Did you ever tell his son?
No, I never did actually. I don't remember ever telling him, but there's they probably know so much without you even telling them.
Yeah, to them that's
Um,
probably, yeah, oh yeah, of course, we sent he was sent to you. He was sent to get you. I'm trying to find another portion that I wanted to read to you from what I read earlier. And well, I'll get to that later on. It's my turn for a story. I wanted to tell the story that I've told this so many times that some people go, yeah, I've heard that story. And it's actually in my, on my YouTube channel, I have a playlist called interviews. And I went back and looked and that I have a interview from 2010 where I tell this story. So it's not going to be any different, but to me, it's so significant because so many times we doubt ourselves, we doubt our lot in life, we doubt whether or not we're even meant to do what we're doing, that whole, you know, you know, false sense of whether or not what's it called? There's a name for it where people don't think that they're supposed to be doing what they're doing or they're worthy of it. But anyway, so I was ordained, I went into ministry a little later in life. I was already in my 40s. I was 44 when I was ordained. That was after 2 years of seminary. So I had spent most of my life in human services, nonprofits. And so I was a little intimidated by all the meetings I wanted to start meeting other clergy. So I would go to interfaith dialogues and I started meeting other clergy people, but they were all so much more seasoned than me, and I was like, oh, well, who do I think I am? Why am I trying to, be in this place and in this station of life?
Imposter syndrome?
But that's the word yeah, that's the term I was looking for, imposter syndrome. Thank you. So I was invited to this big luncheon and there were hundreds of clergy from all different denominations. And not many people recognize interfaith anyway, so someone like, oh, what does that mean? Pick a horse and ride it kind of thing. So I was very intimidated. I was feeling very shy and I was sitting at a table speaking with the people that were chosen for my table. And I had this thought that as soon as we break for lunch, I'm just going to sneak away because I really felt like I didn't have enough that I could say to them. I didn't have a lot of experience and everybody was talking about their congregations and all this. And I ended up speaking with this guy that I found very charming, very personable. None of us exchanged names. This is an important point to make. None of us knew each other. We were just like jumped right into telling where you're from and what do you do. And this charming guy had a lot of stories. So I was like, okay, so as soon as we break for lunch, and I'm looking to see what time's lunch, I'm going to sneak off. So they get up at around time for lunch break, and I'm ready to make my escape. And they say, oh, we're not going to break for lunch. We'll serve you at your tables because we're going to have our keynote speak while you're eating. And I'm thinking, well, okay, that's okay. I can still maybe before the keynote gets up, I can sneak off. I'm still like planning my escape, right? So this charming guy that I've been talking to gets up and he's like, oh, I got to get up on the podium. I'm this keynote. I'm like, oh, now how can I leave now? I've been talking to this guy for the past 2 hours and he's the keynote. I can't, I don't want to walk away while he's speaking. So he gets up and he's dynamic. He's amazing. And I'm like, oh man, I wish someday I could be like him. And he's like, I know you're thinking that someday you wish you had the courage to get up here and speak the way I'm speaking to you. And I'm like, I didn't know I was thinking that. I was like, well, it's just a coincidence, because he doesn't know that I am not seasoned and I'm not worthy of this. He's like, I know you think you're not worthy and you're not seasoned. And I'm like, okay, this is getting really weird. This guy's like in my head, right? And I'm thinking, is this punk, is there cameras coming or something? So I decided, you know what? I'm going to play a game with God. I'm just going to play a game. And I would ask a question and I'd say, you know what? If I'm supposed to be here, call my name. He goes, I know you want God to call you by name. And I'm like, all right, call me by name. Right? I'm thinking this is This is it. I have sealed the deal. It's not me. I don't belong here. So he has this like paper in front of him and he opens up and he goes, Reverend Lori Cardona. Oh my God. I was propelled. I just was propelled out of my seat. I went up on stage and he looks at me like he never knew my name. And he's like, oh, you're the person I've been talking to for the past 2 hours. And I'm like, what do I do? He goes, say a prayer. And he hands me the microphone. And I start praying over these hundreds of seasoned clergy people. And they're up and they're like, yeah, and they're hanging out with me. And I, in that moment, had no fear. I had no doubt. And he leans over to me and he said, you've been anointed. And I said, why did you call my name? He goes, oh, I don't know. I just picked up the paper and I just went like this and it landed, my finger landed on your name. So when I have these moments of imposter syndrome and fear and wondering what made me think I could do this, I remember that moment because I wanted to leave. I was challenging, I was challenging God's source love by moment by moment. And the answer kept coming back until it called me by name.
What's remarkable about that story is that you both happened to sit at the same table, and that was random as well. It wasn't like you were even had assigned seats or had name cards in front of your plates.
Nothing, nothing. It was sort of like disorganized, and that's why they didn't break for lunch. It was kind of like, sit down. We're trying to do this, that, and the other thing, and it took a long time for the programs to actually start. So that's why they didn't want us to break. And there were a lot of people at my table. Never exchanged names with this guy. And to tell you the truth, I still don't remember his name because all of that was just such an amazing experience. So amazing. And I know that you and I, we're going to tell like two, 3 stories, but there's so many. I have so many stories of things that have occurred in my life that I know that it was a God thing, whatever you think God is, that I know that's what stopped me from getting hurt. That's what put me in a place where I was talking to the right person at the right time. And that's the time or the place or the moment where it may not have felt good. It may not have felt right. It might have been very scary. I might have wanted to run away. And yet something has us take that peek into eternity, into another dimension. We're here to have those experiences.
And there, like you said, there are so many experiences because we've been around a while, right? And
Yes.
and so like we get accustomed, maybe a little bit spoiled by some of these experiences, and I forget some of them. One just popped into my head now listening to you, and it's very brief, little tiny story, but I was living at home in North Miami in my parents' house. I had come back from Buffalo, which I talked about in the earlier story, and um, I guess I was kind of like the black sheep of the five kids, a failure to launch, right? Like the Matthew
Oh,
McConaughey movie.
yeah. I
And I'm
remember.
sure they weren't thrilled about me living back at home with them, but I
Oh no,
had this
that's good.
I had this heavy winter coat that I bought up in Buffalo. It was like a really thick suede coat with the sheepskin lining and all that, and it had torn. There was a torn on a tear on one of the seams, and my father saw that, and to this day, it was one of the sweetest things he ever did for me. It was a small action of kindness, but he said, I can fix that," and he pulled out this huge leather needle that he had, and he repaired my winter coat. Maybe he was hoping I would go back to Buffalo.
And he just happened to have a needle for leather. That's pretty amazing. But that was very
Exactly.
sweet. That was
So
sweetness.
it was. So and at the time I was just getting interested in all this mysticism and meditation. My teachers from India, and my dad was hesitant about. He was worried that I was getting involved in something foreign or dangerous, and I said, Dad, my teacher talks about how when a great master takes on a disciple or grants them the gift of holy initiation into the light and sound current, they take on all your karmas from all your past lifetimes. So all you have to work out is your karmas for this lifetime. And I said, and as I was going to hang up the winter coat in the closet of that room we were in, I stepped in and I was barefoot, and I said, um, and my teacher says that he could reduce, if he wants, he could reduce a heavy karma like the gallows to a pinprick. And as soon as I said that, I stepped into toward the closet to hang my coat up, and I stepped on that leather needle. I don't know why my dad had dropped it, on the floor there in the closet, and it went right to the bone, and it really hurt. But then I thought, oh my gosh, I just said he can reduce the gallows to a pinprick.
Pinprick. And there you
So I
had it.
stopped complaining. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept because it goes back to our idea that all of this is a soul's alchemy, whether it's a pinprick or a broken back, right? And maybe that's the way we have to think of it, that we're reducing karma, we're cleaning up karma, we're healing, because we don't know why certain experiences are coming our way. And maybe it is an opportunity to reduce the heaviness, of maybe some past mistakes, quote unquote. And Course in Miracles says we just need to we just need to be willing to move toward correction, not beat ourselves up, not beat anybody else up, but just to move toward correction. And that correction takes us to a higher way of thinking, right? Rise higher, love steadily, forgive readily. And the fact that you told a dad story makes me want to tell a dad story. um, as you know, my dad was killed in a car accident, so there wasn't any time to adjust. It was a shocking death, and because of that, there were periods of time where I was just sort of in a fog. My grief was very like a heavy fog. And I wanted a sign. I wanted a sign, some kind of communication from him. And it was hard for me to even relax into that idea because my nervous system, my mind, all of it had to come out of the shock. And so one night, I was looking through. I had this basket of paperwork and bills and things that I had to go through. And so I was working and I got tired and I put it down. And I specifically remember looking at it because I remember thinking, oh, I should be a little more organized, like all this paperwork was in there. And I was exhausted emotionally, physically, spiritually. And I went to sleep. And in the morning, when I woke up, I looked over at that basket and all the papers in this basket had divided. And what I was looking at was a newspaper clipping that my father had sent me maybe 10, 15 years previous. That was really sweet. He had gone to a museum of accomplished women. And so he sent me the clippings of these accomplished women, but then he cut out a picture of me and he added it to the article, and he put my name on it, and he said the first woman in our family to graduate college. And I saved it. I actually like had it laminated or something, and I saved it. And that morning, it was facing me. I did not set that up the night before. I did
It's
not.
so warm, heartwarming story.
Very, yeah, well, he was so sweet, such a sweet guy that if anybody was going to break through the veils of dimensions, whatever's between us, and make that happen, it would have been a soul like that guy. Hmm.
He had done that. He had put your picture on the article back when he was alive, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, this was like
Right. Yeah,
15, 20 years previous, because he
right.
died in '07, and maybe this was like the '80s that he had sent me the article. And I kept
Mhm.
it because I thought it was such a cute thing that he did, that he cut out my picture and put it on this article that he had seen of accomplished women. And then he added my name and my accomplishment that I had graduated college.
Love it. And he maybe didn't even know yet at that time that you would become a reverend.
No, that was yeah, I think I just yeah, the '80s. I didn't go to seminary till late '90s.
Wow. Well, I
Mm.
have one more story if we have time for it.
You do?
Oh, good, because this one is just burning. Because we've been talking also about healings, right? And
Yes.
I've never been one to seek out physical healings, hands-on healings. Massage was about as far as I went if I were in pain, and so that just never appealed to me. I've been lucky that I didn't have a lot of pain, so I didn't. Some people have a lot of chronic pain, and they're always seeking someone who can do a hands-on healing. And of course, there's Reiki, and there's all these other different ways of healing people. I was never interested in that, and um, yet I did have some chronic pain, and I'm going back to Buffalo. I don't know why I keep going back to Buffalo, but we're going back to 1980, 1979, 1980 up to 1982. Those few years, I got heavily into downhill skiing.
Mm.
And yeah, twice a week, I would drive an hour or so to where the mountains were, and um, just loved it and couldn't get enough of it. But my feet never fit. I couldn't find any ski boots that were wide enough for my feet, which I inherited from my dad, my flat feet. And so I was wearing boots that were too narrow. And in the freezing cold winters in Buffalo, you just don't feel it. You go numb in your feet, especially with all that activity, all the skiing. So I didn't realize it was doing some kind of damage to one of my feet.
Mm.
And after I stopped skiing, I noticed my right foot was aching and throbbing, and especially if I walked for any distance on it. So I just lived with it from like 1980 or 81 or 82 up to like 86 or 87. And I got used to it. I just, well, I'll try not to walk too much. And then I traveled to India to study meditation at the feet of my teacher. And in India, one of the first things they taught us back then was it's very rude in our culture here in India to extend your feet out toward anyone, especially the bottoms of your feet. You,
Mm.
you, you keep your legs crossed, or you sit in your chair with your feet flat on the floor. Well, I was tired one day, and we were like 10 or 20 of us had gone into the meditation hall waiting for the teacher to come down, and he would put everyone into a meditation. And I sat in the front of the room. He entered in the rear, and he put everyone into meditation, and it came to me last. And I was tired and lazy, and I'd forgotten that it's rude. And I was leaning back in my chair with my feet sticking way out, and he tripped on my
Oh,
right foot.
oh
And
no.
he was an older man. He was about the age that I am now, and oh, the guilt was killing me. I thought, I don't know
Oh,
what the punishment would be. You
oh,
aren't going to trip a saintly yogic teacher.
oh
So
no.
yeah, and he caught himself, fortunately, and like you said, he made no fuss over it. There was no look, there was nothing coming from him. The guilt was all from within me, and he
Right.
just went ahead and put me into meditation. And remember trying to meditate and thinking, I can't believe what I just did. But his toenail had dug right into the right side of my foot, exactly where it had been throbbing and aching for like 5 or 6 years already. And I thought nothing of it, you know? And when I got back from India, back to Miami, I volunteered to help. I was asked to help a friend put up flyers and posters on college campuses about meditation classes. So we were walking all over Miami-Dade Community College campus, which is quite large. And we were walking for over an hour. And I suddenly realized my foot isn't hurting at all. And 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 the reason I say this, I just want to be so clear. You know, these healings happen spontaneously sometimes, but it's not that this line of teachers does not want to be known as healers, because once you put that out there, everybody, you get millions of people who want hands-on healings and want karmas lifted off of them, and they want people who are sincerely interested in their own spiritual development, and then healings might happen spontaneously along the way.
Love that the story ended that way. I mean, I was really hoping that that's what you were going to say about the toenail scratching you, because Even if in that moment he felt a little tripped up, isn't it amazing when we as ourselves can not let being tripped up become a big issue? It's just a little bit of observation, a little bit like, maybe there was a time when you would have been really mad at somebody if they tripped you. And then maybe at some point it was like no big deal. And then another point you think, oh, I'm glad we had that contact, because now that person has a healing, which is, I'm sure, what he knew within himself. He didn't want to hurt you, and he knew you didn't want to hurt him. But I know I can imagine the guilt you were feeling because you're like, oh, embarrassment and guilt. And yet here you had this beautiful healing, and you've maintained a devotion to that path and to that teacher, yes?
And one of the things that is often said about these types of paths is that a true master never takes a misstep. There's never such thing
Ah,
as a misstep.
ah,
So it looked like an accident. Who knows? Maybe it wasn't.
right. He might have seen your legs out there and walked right toward him so he could heal your pain. So I just maybe would like to wrap it up by saying, these stories, they're just stories. I'm sure whoever's listening has stories also, but they're reminders. They're reminders that we're here we are essential workers. We have essential salvation plans for our souls and for the company we keep and the people in our lives and the paths that we cross. And so if we can all enter into any kind of interaction, even if it's somebody at the grocery store, with the understanding that any opportunity to be a blessing might appear as a disguise, might come disguised. Mother Teresa used to say, "I have to love Jesus in all his distressing disguises." And that doesn't just mean that the homeless. It means maybe somebody who yelled at you, somebody who wasn't very nice to you, somebody who tripped up your day. And yet we're doing our part as best we can. Can't say that at the end of every day I think that I rose as high as I wanted to, but that's why we have to continue on this path. That's why we call it spiritual practice. And the acceptance of everything as being gently and divinely ordered for our soul's growth is a compassionate way and a loving way to look at whatever it is that happens. And I wanted to read one more thing to you from A Course in Miracles, but I wanted to also know if there was something else you wanted to say about that.
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you. This lesson says, I want the peace of God. To say these words is nothing, but to mean these words is everything. If you could but just mean them for an instant, there would be no further sorrow possible for you in any form. Heaven would be completely given back to full awareness. The full awareness of heaven is our remembering. To love, serve, and remember is a song that we have our students sing. I'm here to love, serve, and remember. And I think so much of our experiences in life have us experience a little spiritual amnesia. So I think that what you and I are discussing today is the importance of remembering that whatever it is, it's divine providence. And my friend Dr. Grace Telesco came up with an acronym because she's in academia, and Doge has been a little bit of a burden for what she's had to do. The new Department of Government stuff. And
See,
what's the last letter? Efficiency, right,
efficiency.
right. And so she changed it to divine order guides everything, DOGE. Divine order guides everything. And that includes the divine providence that gave us these opportunities to experience miracles and to transmute anything that might be karmic or dark or upsetting, and to see the light in it and to bring the light to it. So thank you. Thank you for this discussion. And one of these days, you're going to send me another email, and I'm going to call you up and say, we need to talk about that. I need to dig deep. I need to pick your brain. And I'm glad that I also have your heart and your soul and your spirit Thank you so much for being a brother to me on this path.
Thank you, Lori.
So more to come. God
Yes.
bless you.